Good evening, everybody. It's so good to be with you tonight and to get to be here with these wonderful folks who are working hard on your behalf. And congratulations to you for being here because you're actively involved in your democracy. As a veteran, I find that critically important, and I appreciate that you're taking an interest in what's going on in your community. Like Representative Moore said, this is not a partisan event. We represent everybody. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or any other number of things. I don't have that as a screening question. When you come to see me, I represent all of you. I represent people who vote and also people who don't vote. Because, whoops. I broke it. Did I turn it off?
Press the off button.
Oh, here it is again. Okay. I might have pressed a button. I don't know. So as I was saying, we represent everybody, whether you vote or don't vote, because we're all in this together. We all live in this community together, and we all have a vested interest in making our community the best it can be and making our government the best it can be. So I just wanted to reiterate that, and I know everybody here at the table feels the same way. And as Representative Moore said, we are in governing mode. I do have a website as well, which is votezahra.com, and Zahra is Z-A-H-R-A, votezahra.com, and you can reach me there. You can also reach me at senate.ga.gov. There's a place where you can see every senator and look at the mug shots, and you can email any one of us. It's very easy, and I get all those emails. So, and I try to respond timely. I will tell you that we have been transitioning from this session being over to, I also practice law, so we're doing both, just like Representative Moore. And we do have staff who helps us as well. In fact, tonight I have John Lee with me. John, could you please raise your hand? John is one of my very talented high school interns / jack of all trades. I will tell you that working in the session was wonderful this year. I had a great team of interns from high school all the way through college. Also had a lot of pages who came and worked with us for a day. And it is really inspiring to see very energized young people. And I have so much more faith in our country because these young people are so engaged and involved and ask such great questions and research these issues and give us good answers and give us good questions to ask. I was really, really amazed by that. So since a couple of you folks, I recognize a lot of you, but a few of you don't know me, I actually am a mother, a military veteran, a former federal prosecutor, and an attorney. I live in Lawrenceville. I've lived in Gwinnett County more than 24 years after returning from my service overseas in the military. And I've been here ever since, went to law school here as well. And so it's a great honor to get to go down to the Capitol now and try to figure out all the issues that are going on that come at you from many, many different directions. And you have to quickly become an expert in so many different issues. And I found that quite challenging and interesting. And one of the most interesting things I got to work on was hemp. I am actually on the Agriculture and Consumer Affairs Committee, and so that bill, House Bill 213, came to our committee. And wow, I have to admit to you, I had no real idea what hemp was. I now have some idea of what hemp is and what a great opportunity it is for our farmers, actually. And as you folks are probably aware, we did have a tornado in southwest Georgia which devastated our farming industry. And we still have yet to get the federal money that's been promised to our farmers. So this has been a big issue that we've been working on in the Agriculture Committee to try to give relief to these farmers, try to find ways that they can revive their farms and give some kind of relief for them to be able to rebuild. There are some farms that will never be able to rebuild, particularly pecan trees, because they have such a long growth cycle, which is also something else I learned about. I'm on the Natural Resources Committee as well, which covers the Chattahoochee. I was very happy to get a part of the budget for the Chattahoochee Nature Center. That was one of the requests that I received as a senator that I was able to deliver on, as well as approximately $5 million for Gwinnett Technical College. They had asked for money for specific construction, and we were able to get that fully funded as well. And that was a bipartisan effort, I'm happy to say, and we were very successful as a delegation in getting our budget requests through. I am also the chair of the Gwinnett County delegation, so you can also reach out to me in that context as well. And we as a delegation, and I should say the Senate delegation, we as the Senate delegation try to get together and work on issues. And again, we are bipartisan. We have Republicans and Democrats on the delegation. We don't have any third parties yet. Though I anticipate maybe someday they will be. Other things that we worked on in that I am most proud of is Senate Bill 48, which is a dyslexia bill, which should I call you board member? Dr. Murphy, thank you, I need to get that right. Dr. Murphy talked about. So I am not good with numbers because I actually have dyslexia. I grew up with dyslexia and had to overcome dyslexia as a young child, and if not for my mother, I would not be standing here today as a productive citizen. And as many people know, if you don't learn to read by third grade, there's great statistics, or I should say bad statistics, that say you are more likely to go to prison because it's hard to read, therefore it's hard to get a job, therefore it's hard to earn your living and support your family. So it's critical that children learn to read by third grade. And the dyslexia bill had actually been started by a study committee. Senator Fran Millar, someone had mentioned him to me tonight, had worked on this. And when I talked to Senator Millar when he was leaving the legislature, I said, are there any bills or things that are really important to you that you'd like to see happen? And he said, yeah, there's this dyslexia bill. And I said, oh great, that's wonderful. I would love to help with that. And so I was fortunate enough to get to do that, and I was one of the co-sponsors on the bill. Senator P.K. Martin was the lead sponsor, and what happens is when you have a bill, people get to sign on and try to help get the bill passed. And so that was something we were all very proud of, and there will be a pilot program, and Dr. Murphy can tell you a whole lot more about it than I probably even can. Because what happens is we draft a bill, it goes to the House, they make some changes, and then it comes back and we either agree or disagree, and we can make changes again. So sometimes by the end, you've really got to be paying attention because so many changes are made when they go back and forth between the houses. And particularly on the last day, you're trying to read all the bills to make sure you see every change that's been made by the other house before it came back over, and it can get real crazy. But that is a bill I am very, very proud of. Also, Senate Bill 99. I said on natural resources, I also get to deal with hunting and hunting regulations, which is fortuitous for me because I actually come from a family of hunters and actually know about bag limits and going hunting and the hunting seasons and where the northern region begins and where the southern region begins and where they end and everything in between. And what we were able to do was when you go to get your hunting license, you can also sign up to be an organ donor. So we're trying to make it easier to be an organ donor, and as you guys know, there's such long lists for folks who need organs that this is a good initiative that we hope people will take advantage of. The other thing I mentioned is I am a veteran. I'm also on the Veteran Affairs Committee. We did a lot of work on veterans. One thing I'm particularly proud of was Senate Resolution 104, which is a resolution that I presented to urge expansion of veteran affairs facilities in Gwinnett County. We have one of the largest veteran populations in the state. We are underserviced. I know y'all have seen the headlines. We've got a lot of issues we need to be working on with veterans. Another bill that I had introduced that I'll be working on over this summer is to have PTSD training for law enforcement, to make that a mandatory part of training for all post-certified law enforcement, so that when they're dealing with someone with PTSD, which a lot of folks who are veterans have PTSD, they are able to recognize and deal with those situations and de-escalate them, and we will be able to equip them to be able to do that, because if you don't have that training, it's particularly difficult to deal with somebody with PTSD. And I can speak from experience because my brother is a disabled veteran from Iraq and Afghanistan, and he has PTSD. And so it was truly life-changing to have your brother leave and then come back and be a totally different person. And so I am very committed to those issues. And of course, as Representative Moore, and I know everyone here has said, if you have ideas on anything, and I mean anything, that you think can make the world a better place, come let us know. Because we might be working on it, or you might be the one who has that great idea as to how to fix something. There's one little bill that Representative Moore did not mention, which was a bill that had been trying to fix the SPLOST reporting for all the mayors and entities across the state. There was a problem with how the reporting was done and the timing. We were actually able to fix that bill and get it through through both houses. And so the mayor of Berkeley Lake is really happy about that, because now she can report officially in the right time and meet all the deadlines. And so that will be something that a lot of the municipalities across the state are very happy about. And so it makes sense. Yes, ma'am?
Number for that?
That is House Bill 379.
Thank you.
The last committee I didn't mention is the Special Judiciary Committee, and that's kind of a cleanup committee. We get all kinds of crazy stuff in there that didn't go through judiciary for whatever reason, and so sometimes we're put forth with some of those bills. I can't think of a bill right now that actually was passed out of that committee. I know several came through and were put forth for consideration. So that's generally an overview of what I worked on as a freshman senator. And there were 5 new senators this year, and it was quite an interesting crowd. We had 3 from Gwinnett, North Fulton area, and then we had 1 from Columbus and 1 from Forsyth. And so we had a good time together, bonding and learning from each other. I'm very excited that I'm one of, I believe, 2 law enforcement folks in the Senate. The other one was Senator Randy Robinson, who's from Columbus, who is a new senator, who is a sheriff. And as I said, I was a former federal prosecutor. So we had a lot of fun together reaching across the aisle to talk about these issues, specifically the PTSD initiative that we'll be working on together, and other ideas that we're contemplating on behalf of law enforcement, or helping equip law enforcement, or being aware of law enforcement issues. And then you've heard education. As you know, education was a huge area that we worked on in the legislature. It is a huge part of the budget. And then we also worked on the budget that Representative Moore is talking about. And so I think that concludes my introductory comments to you guys. And yes, ma'am.
PTSD training, is that under the Veterans Facility Bill, or was that its own bill?
That was its own bill, and that is, where did I put that? I have the number here somewhere.
It doesn't have to be right now. Before you leave.
Yeah, I got it. I'll get that for you. I know I have it in my little notebook here. But it is actually a separate bill that talks about post-training for PTSD. And what we're actually looking at is a different kind of bill that actually encompasses mental health issues, which there is a study commission that was passed to look at mental health to include PTSD issues. So we're hoping that that's all going to come together after that study committee gets to contemplate and research. So first I wanted to say Senate Bill 193 is the PTSD bill. So as to the medical marijuana bill, you're right, Judy. There was a lot of consternation over that bill, and I will share with you that Senator Robertson and I spoke about that extensively. Particularly, the Senate version was much more narrow. It went over to the House, or actually it was made narrow and then it was changed again, and I don't remember exactly what all the changes were. But I will stress to you, and what I think ultimately the vote was significantly in favor of the low THC cannabis. I don't remember the numbers, but it wasn't close at the end of the day. And I think the reason why is, one, Representative Moore talked about how we do have people who need these oils and they're critical to their health. and we heard testimony from those folks. We also heard from law enforcement, and there were things that law enforcement favored and there were things that law enforcement did not favor. And we were trying to keep all of that in the big picture. You will note that it is a very, very narrow market, and it's going to be very regulated. We have 2 classes of production licenses. There's going to be 2 Class 1 production licenses, only 2 in the whole state. You can grow 100,000 square feet indoor. And then there's application fees and all kinds of rules about that. And then there's Class 2 production, and there's only 4 of those in the whole state. And that you can grow 50,000 square feet indoor. So as you see, there are 6 production licenses. And what everyone really thinks is we're going to give this a try, and we can always come back and change it. And that's really what everybody was saying at the end of the day is we really need to do something for the folks who need this for their health and livelihood and who cannot do it legally. We actually heard about a family who the dad lives here and the mom and the kid moved to Colorado so that the child could have help with his seizures. And he was having upwards of 40 seizures a day, and with the low THC oil was having 1 to 2 or none. So it does need to be regulated, and we are going to be paying close attention, and I'm sure, in fact, I know that the sheriffs and others will let us know if it's not. And I think we do have to try, and if it doesn't work, we pull it back. And if you guys hear of anything and it's not working out here, we certainly want to hear from you. But that, at the end of the day, is why I think it ultimately passed, and both Randy and I did vote for it. Well, I haven't heard about that. I haven't heard that it's been proposed, so I would say I would want to hear about it and see what's being proposed. I don't have an answer for that question other than to say I would want to hear about it. And obviously, if we did have such a thing, they'd have to follow the law, and it would be closely regulated as it should be.
Yeah, the House bill called for 60 Medipot dispensaries. It was scaled down, but that was a lot.
I don't really have too much to add on. I think Representative Moore covered very comprehensively, other than to say that it does need to be regional, and we have to connect all the way across the state. And there is conversation about connectivity, not only transportation-wise, but also with 5G and the ability to deliver medicine, telemedicine to rural areas that don't have doctors within close access. So we do have to think regionally, and people do need to be involved in the conversation, and I believe that there needs to be more conversation, and like Representative Moore said, I encourage you to be involved in that conversation, because it cannot be ignored. We will choke economically if we don't deal with the traffic, because folks won't want to live here because they can't get anywhere. And I can speak from my own experience. I do travel to go to court, and it takes double the amount of time to get wherever I'm going. And I said, I've lived here 24 years, it's at least double. And I always plan extra, and then lo and behold, every once in a while, hi Judge, yes, I'm here late, I do call ahead. But it is something that impacts everybody. And even if you're not going downtown, but you want to get out here and go shopping or go see your grandkids or anything like that, it impacts everybody at all age levels. And I think folks just need to be involved in that conversation to make sure we all are contemplating it as broadly as we need to. The House resolution that you mentioned, but also as the Agricultural Committee, we are trying to look at issues related to the environment that impacts farming specifically, and then also, as I mentioned, I'm in natural resources. We're looking at it from that perspective as well. But the most concrete thing is the House resolution that Representative Moore mentioned that was passed by large numbers in both houses. I let Representative Moore, I asked her to go first because that is a House bill, and they extensively talked and I should say, argued / communicated about that bill. They did a lot of good revisions to the bill. The original bill had some flaws, and there were some good things that came out of those conversations. Specifically, one of the positive developments was that there was a lot of controversy about exact match. I know you guys may remember that, like if you have a hyphenated name, they wouldn't let you vote, and it became a problem. Well, that is one of the things that has been fixed. If the registration information doesn't exactly match the records at the Driver Services or Social Security Administration, you can vote if you have the proof of identity, and then they go back and check it, but you can vote. So that was one thing. Also, 10 or more people can request the Secretary of State to re-examine the devices. So if you're out here voting and there's 10 of you and you say, hey, something's going on, you can request those machines to be evaluated, and that did not previously exist, and that is now part of the law. There's also a change to the purging of the voter files. I'm sure y'all heard about that, people being dropped from the voter files. Now you have to go 5 years without voting to be considered inactive. Previously it was 3. And the election board has to send notice to the voter's last known address before purging. We also were added to what's called the ERIC system, which is a nationwide system where states can tell you when people are moving, and you can inform, I'm moving to Minnesota, and they're going to somehow hopefully be able to keep that straight. I have yet to see that. I'm not an expert on ERIC, but I've been told that is a good system. Again, as Representative Moore cited, there are other concerns, and it is not a perfect fix. And again, we can go back and fix it again if we need to. The big reason I voted against it is I see it as an unfunded mandate. There was not good numbers about how much it was going to cost and how effective it was going to be, and particularly for local folks who have to run the elections, how much it's going to cost. And the day of the vote, the numbers for some of that came out, and we didn't have time before the vote to actually evaluate the numbers. And I did object to that as well. I did vote against this bill, but like Representative Moore, I am hopeful, and it is an improvement over what we have, and hopefully we will all be happy to say that it's a system that at least works, or if it doesn't work, we'll be able to fix it. And that's where all of you are important to that. When you're voting and you're seeing issues, you need to let us know. Secretary of State's office, hold them accountable. He said you're going to have a readable ballot. If we don't, let him know. That's his job. He's specifically the Secretary of State. I mean, it's our job too to know about it and to try to fix it, but he ultimately is held responsible for those voting machines and how much they cost and how effective they are and how hackable they are or aren't, and how much they really are reading your intent as a voter. So I encourage you to stay involved in that process. So I'll just add a little bit to that. This actually is something I was very concerned with during the legislature, and if you saw me on your live feed at any time, my question for almost every person presenting was how much is this going to cost? It got to the point where people would stand up and say, oh, for the senator from the 48, this is going to cost $150,000. I found that interesting, that I was the person asking that question over and over and over and over. For example, the voting machines didn't have a fiscal note. Again, I said I voted against it because I have no idea how much it's going to cost. Can we even afford it? There's no fiscal note, and we're supposed to have fiscal notes when they have a fiscal impact. And you can't tell me those voting machines don't have an impact. Or I should say with that, there was a fiscal note, but it was a guess, and we don't know how much those machines are going to cost, and that really bothers me. Okay, I'm not happy about that, but I am ever hopeful and optimistic that it's going to work out. But it did become somewhat entertaining to always be the one asking how much something was going to cost. Because I do think we are stewards of taxpayer money. And like Representative Moore said, I too am a taxpayer, and I want my money's worth. And I want to be held accountable for that money. And you will see, I just had pulled this up and then I flipped the page, there is a bill that I was one of the co-sponsors on. Senator John Albers had two bills that talked about making sure we're getting our money's worth. And I was co-sponsor on what's Senate Bill 120, the Georgia Tax Credit Business Case Act. So that if we're giving you a tax break for bringing something to our community, are we getting our money's worth? And this bill puts in a process for that. And again, if we're not getting our money's worth, we shouldn't be doing it. Having said that as well, we do have the priorities that Representative Moore mentioned. And I wanted to share with you, and I'm sure you know this because you're up on this, but our the 2020 budget is $27.5 billion. 55% of that goes to education. 22% goes to healthcare, 8% goes to public safety, 7% goes to transportation, and 8% goes to the other state departments that are being run on your behalf. So that right now is our priorities. Do you agree with those priorities? Or do you not? That'd be something I'd like to know. Do you think we should be spending 55% of our budget on education? And if not, why? And if not, please share that with Dr. Murphy, because she's very concerned about educating our children. And I personally believe that we have a duty as a country to educate our children so that everybody can pursue their American dream. And I didn't share, but I am also the daughter of an immigrant and a product of the public school system, and greatly believe that that is the way to upward mobility and to being a productive citizen in society, is to having a base level of education for everyone in our country. But again, I was the one down there in the Senate asking, how much is this going to cost, over and over and over again. And I invite you to ask your folks, are you paying attention to my money? Are you making sure it's being spent well? And hold us accountable. Because that's what I was trying to do. And I'm starting to change that mindset in the Senate, because they know I'm coming back next year and I'm going to ask that same question.
Thank you for that.
And in fact, there is a tax cut. There's a tax break that I had proposed for disabled veterans in our state to not have to pay state income taxes. And I did not put it forward because I did not have a fiscal note and didn't know how much it was going to cost. And I didn't think I could stand up and say anything about a law and say, well, you need to pass this. Well, how much is it? I have no idea. But it sounds like it would be nice. Well, yeah, it'd be nice. You can, do a lot of things to be nice. But we got to make sure we can afford them. I will tell you, though, that the folks who were working on the appropriations side, Senator Jack Hill, who's from South Georgia, is incredibly bright, has been doing this for 20 years, and was really, really focusing on the budget, the supplemental budget and the 2020 budget, and making sure that he was hearing from all the different senators from all across the state as to what each community needed. And I know we're all Metro Atlantans. I actually grew up in rural Georgia, though, and there are different needs for different parts of the state. And that was something I got a real appreciation for that I had kind of forgotten. We are very different depending on where you live as to what your needs are. And so we also have to be able to meld our laws and our budget and everything to the different needs of the different communities. And I find that is the biggest challenge, because when we all sit in there together to try to figure out how to fund education, it is really different in these different communities and very challenging for school boards all across the state. They all have different challenges, and I commend these folks for doing a great job. Gwinnett County, as you know, has one of the best school systems in the country, so we are very, very fortunate. And we are a beacon in the state. And I will tell you, I was very glad that when we were voting on a lot of school stuff, these folks were communicating with me. I was getting texts and emails also from the mayor. Anytime there was something going on that was impacting your community, I was hearing from them, and I was getting a text. Or I was texting them, hey Mayor, what do you think about this bill? Did you look at it? Or did you know what you think? And I appreciate that. Mr. McCluskey was down at the Capitol. Saw him every day, 6 and 7 times a day. They are on top of it, paying attention. And I really want to commend these folks for doing that, because that also gave me an appreciation for how much folks are really trying to work on your behalf We're not perfect, but we are working hard to do our best for you. So I just wanted to make sure to let you guys know that. Thank you.